Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, Bill Reimer, your reluctant prophet. I have a bit of a story to tell you today, but first of all, I'm going to begin by reading from the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verses 10 to 18, from the King James Version. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace, and above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always, with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. So permit me to tell you my story as a backdrop for today's discussion. I had two major passions in my former life. By night and on weekends, I booked and hosted roots music shows and events where I had the unmerited privilege of sitting in with the very best in the music business, while by day, I trained workers in their bosses and workplace organization and problem-solving methodologies. That is, when I was able to find work doing such, after retiring after 33 years from General Motors St. Catharines, where I was a quality systems resource in the Gen 3, Gen 4 engine plant. And although both gigs are behind me now, I am unable to forget why I genuinely enjoyed doing both. Regarding music, I love to provide a forum where gifted artists were able to tell their story, since roots music, if nothing else, tells stories about the common man and woman. And regarding workplace organization and problem solving, I am of the belief that it is essential for workers to be provided with tools and information to do their jobs safely and correctly the first time. Moreover, to provide them with the means to troubleshoot the inevitable quality issues that crop up in production settings. A chief motivation for doing such was due to the fact that this so seldom happens in the workplace. Management teams all too often simply do not understand the shop floor, spend too little time there, and have an abysmal view of their workforce. I am therefore very much a man of the common people. I understand them because I am one of them. So, I sought to provide the workforce with useful training and tools which could help them navigate the nonsense lamented to be so often inherent in the workplace. But the path to success and continuous improvement is not easy, so permit me to read from Sir Walter Scott's poem about my ancient ancestor, Thomas the Rhymer, which metaphorically addresses why the righteous path is fraught with difficulty. Just this short stanza. O see ye not yon narrow road, so thick beset with thorns and briars. That is the path of righteousness, though after it but few enquires. And see ye not that braid road that lies across that lily leven? That is the path of wickedness, though some call it the road to heaven. The road to heaven is indeed fraught with thorns and briars. Therefore, I am writing this in the hopes of helping you map a path for yourself through the prevailing postmodern neo-Marxist mindset that has infected our politics today, which has in turn completely captured much of the younger generation. So, as a musician, I will tell you that story, while as someone trained in root cause analysis, I hope to provide you with an understanding of the nature of our ideological battle for the hearts and minds of our fellows. Many of you who watch this channel may be familiar that I often state that there can be no political solution to a moral, philosophical, and spiritual crisis, since any fool can tell you what is wrong. But it takes an expert to address the problem at its root cause, to assign documented, corrective actions. So that is my goal, to define the problem as succinctly and simply as I can, then to additionally equip you with the tools you will need to counter the problem of ideological possession. We are living witnesses to a form of mass hysteria which has taken hold of society to infect our institutions with utter ideological nonsense. To understand the nature of this possession, we must begin with the Academy and its use of the dialectical philosophy of a German philosopher named Hegel. So let us examine how Hegel's dialectic thinking has often been employed to help create the murderous tyrannies so prevalent in the 20th century. Since the Hegelian dialectic has been used by virtually all authoritarians in one form or at least to some extent to create the mental disorders of mass delusional ideation necessary to support totalitarian tyranny. So let's look at Nazism and fascism. The Hegelian dialectic, with its emphasis on conflict leading to synthesis, influenced some aspects of Nazi ideology, particularly in their use of propaganda and manipulation of public opinion. However, it's important to note that Nazism was a complex ideology with multiple influences, including social Darwinism, racism, nationalism, and totalitarianism. While elements of dialectical thinking can be identified in Nazi propaganda, it would be reductionist to attribute the entirety of Nazism to Hegelian philosophy. Nevertheless, it played a significant role in creating the propaganda machine. Hitler's propaganda machine was primarily orchestrated by the Ministry of Public Enlightenment. Notice the choice of words here. To be lied to is to be enlightened, according to the operation of this dialectic. Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda led by Joseph Goebbels. This ministry developed a program of propaganda that infiltrated every area of German life and was cleverly tailored to appeal to various groups in the population. All forms of media, education, industry, and scientific activity were used to propagate National Socialist ideals, just as they were in Canada and as they are today during the whole COVID pandemic. Hitler himself frequently appeared in mass rallies to arouse nationalist fervor by delivering the propaganda in person. The key themes of National Socialist propaganda were the supremacy and racial purity of the German people. Always there's this element of race and identity in any form of totalitarianism. Instead of the blindness of English common law, where the legal system cannot care about who you are, now the blinders have been ripped off of Lady Justice, and all we see now is race, either positively or negatively. Here, race was used both positively and negatively to identify the good guys. The key themes of National Socialist propaganda were the supremacy and racial purity of the German people and their betrayal by both foreign aggressors and enemies who had infiltrated their country. So here again, you see the victim versus victimizer narrative inherent to the Hegelian dialectic. The propaganda used by the German Nazi Party in the years leading up to and during Adolf Hitler's dictatorship of Germany from 1933 to 1945 was a crucial instrument for acquiring and maintaining power and for the implementation of Nazi policies. All the links provided below that section of the blog. Next one. R8. How neo-Marxism infected the academy, which lies upstream of all of our institutions. From the university comes all of these ideologically possessed people. So it's obviously in the universities that Hegel's dialectic is being employed to brainwash people. The Hegelian dialectic played a significant role in the development of neo-Marxist critical theory, particularly through the work of thinkers like Herbert Marcuse, Theodor Adorno, Max Horkheimer, and later Jürgen Habermas. These thinkers drew on Hegel's dialectical method to critique capitalist society and explore possibilities for social transformation, which is all we hear out of Trudeau's government. In Hegel's dialectic, contradictions lead to the development of new ideas and systems. In other words, contradictions are necessary in the dialectic. Get that through your head. They're necessary, a necessary part of the dialectic to create contradictions and then state that the synthesis between two opposites become the same thing or become synthesized. That's why they can't tell the difference between men and women. Similarly, neo-Marxist critical theorists applied this framework to analyze the conditions and conflicts within capitalist societies, such as exploitation, alienation, and oppression. For example, Marcuse's concept of repressive tolerance can be understood as a dialectical critique of liberal democracy, arguing that the tolerance of oppressive ideas and practices perpetuates social inequalities. Adorno and Horkheimer worked on the culture industry, examining how capitalist mass media and culture reinforce domination and homogenization while suppressing dissent. Overall, while not every aspect of neo-Marxist critical theory directly mirrors Hegel's dialectic, the influence of dialectical thinking is evident in their approach to analyzing and critiquing social structures and dynamics. Next subtitle. In what ways is woke influenced by neo-Marxism and Hegel's dialectical thinking? The term woke is often used to describe a perceived awareness of issues that concern social justice and racial justice. So here we come back to the race aspect. Dividing people according to race. Instead of accepting everyone as being equal, in spite of their race, they still divide according to race. It's influenced by a variety of philosophical and sociological theories, including neo-Marxism and Hegelian dialectics. Neo-Marxism expands upon traditional Marxist ideology. Neo-Marxists apply Marxist thinking to modern issues like race, gender, and sexual orientation, leading to an emphasis on identity politics, which is all we hear today. Many principles of the woke movement align with neo-Marxist thoughts, especially the focus on power structures and the belief that these structures can be oppressive. Hegelian dialectics. Hegelian dialectics involve the process of change in which a concept, thesis, evolves over time to meet its contradiction, antithesis, ultimately leading to a resolution, synthesis. This can be seen in the woke movement's approach to societal change. The movement often positions itself as a counter antithesis to existing social norms, thesis, and seeks to bring about a new societal understanding or synthesis. It is important to note that while these philosophical theories can influence movements like woke, they do not define them entirely. The woke movement, like any social movement, is complex and influenced by a variety of factors, including historical context, cultural trends, and individual perspectives. All the links for that below. So I begin my story again. The parasitic nature of Hegelian dialectical thinking. Years ago, I was warned by a saxophonist who was a neo-Marxist Brock child studies professor by the name of Dr. Hans Scottmeyer that critical theorists were going to take over our cultural institutions. He referred to this as the Long March through the institutions, which is a phrase certainly not coined by him. This was prior to me moving to Norway, so my conversation with Dr. Hans must have taken place in late 2011 or early 2012. By the late summer of 2012, I had come into contact with my future wife while we were working on developing a course on business integrity and effective management practices that had been launched by our mutual friend, Doug Ross. Doug had been a consultant at General Motors, whom I met while I was still working in the quality department. Doug and I had discussed working together in the future as consultants. Since I was retired when I met on Asiri, and since we had subsequently fallen in love, we both felt it would be prudent for me to move to Norway, where we would continue working on our program with hopes of selling our training in Norway. It was in Norway where we would eventually be wed. The course failed to take hold in a country where virtually everything is tightly controlled by the state. So Anna Siri continued with her career employed as a senior advisor in the Norwegian Defense Department. Norway was challenging for me, simply because the more a bureaucracy metastasizes, the more inefficient and cumbersome it will become. I won't bore you with the details as to how difficult it was for us to navigate an immigration system that even those who control it seem not to understand. This is the inevitable result of the administrative state, which is inherent to socialism, where Hegel's dialectical reasoning has assured them that the bigger a monster grows, the easier it will be to keep him in a cage. Something which we now see here in Canada, where Trudeau's administrative bureaucracy has grown far beyond manageability. Let's look at Canada since Justin Trudeau's election in 2015. The Canadian federal bureaucracy has grown significantly. By 2022, it had grown by 27 percentage points, which put it 9 percentage points ahead of population growth. This rapid growth of the bureaucracy started well before the COVID-19 pandemic struck in 2021. Actually, the pandemic began in 2020. I don't know why Bing thinks. The cost of maintaining the federal bureaucracy has also risen alongside its employee headcount. Operational spending for the public service grew steadily from $87.5 billion in the 2019 to 20 fiscal year to $115.9 billion in 2021 to 2022, a 32% increase. And they have the gall to talk about sustainability. Please note that these figures can change over time, and obviously they're only going to get bigger. All the links for the research in that included below that section. So as I stated, Norway was a tough nut for me to crack since I simply couldn't understand their social collectivist mindset. But it wasn't until Anna Siri told me about the Frankfurt School back in 2014 that I truly began to appreciate how insidious the ideology of critical theory is, based as it is on seeing the world through a dialectical lens. The fact that this mindset has gone on to capture the minds of the great investment bankers, high-tech executives, the pharmaceutical industry, and multinational conglomerate boardrooms to create a new form of corporate fascism which has grafted itself, infected like mistletoe, the host that it will eventually kill, is proof man cannot see past his own nose when he rejects the grand narrative about God, to see the world through Hegel's lens. My conclusions: we are witnessing an emergent global tyranny which combines all of the totalizing ideologies of the 20th century seen through Hegel's dialectical lens. I have coined it Marxo-fascism, since we are witnessing the near-perfect blending of ideas which have divided mankind into victim versus oppressor, with the entire enterprise being driven by big pharma in league with multinational conglomerates and investment bankers, who in turn are in league with communist China with the goal of destroying Western culture to return us to serfdom. Amazingly, the ideologically possessed fools behind this totalizing enterprise have hidden its actual outcome by disguising it in language of liberation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, while simultaneously creating an atmosphere of total thought control to maintain their false narrative. It is up to us to deconstruct this false narrative. Will you join me in replacing this false narrative with the grand narrative upon which Western Christianity is founded? And as for the ultimate end game of this ideological possession, our betrayal to communist China is complete. With all the evidence pointing, what all the evidence pointed toward has been confirmed. The Canadian government helped to fund the research which led to the release of a bioweapon. Whether accidentally or deliberately, it matters little. Treasonous Trudeau obviously answers to Beijing. Jiang Guo-Kui, one of the scientists who was fired from Winnipeg's high-security laboratory, was involved in gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. A recently declassified intelligence document shows our own government has used our tax dollars to assist in funding the People's Liberation Army to create a bioweapon in Wuhan, while both the Liberals and the NDP have voted against investigating this treason. If we do not stop this ideological idiocy that has already wreaked untold harm on us, there will be nothing left to recover. Our ideological enemies have unleashed not just a deadly pathogen, they have also helped to infect our universities with ideas used to foment a cultural revolution to destroy us spiritually from within. I will read from an opinion piece published in the Calgary Sun a few days ago, March the 4th, 2024, to finish my thoughts for today. Letters for March 4th, 2024. An effort to suppress opinion needs to be struck down. These bills, a dangerous sign. RE. NDP seeks to suppress speech about climate change and fossil fuels. Kenneth Green, column, February 21st. Bill C. 367 would be a fatal blow to freedom of religion and freedom of expression. Now it is persecution of Christians. Who is next? You. The bill should never see the light of day. Bill C. 372. NDP Charlie Angus tabled this private member's bill, would destroy freedom of expression in Canada. If you dare to express negative thoughts about the government's fossil fuel phobia, question climate change, or promote fossil fuels, you could be jailed for 1 year and it could cost you $750,000. Religious freedom and freedom of expression are the foundations of our democracy, and restricting them would destroy the fabric of Canadian society. Kenneth Green from Fraser Institute writes, Canada is a constitutional parliamentary democracy where differences of opinion are to be resolved through elections, where people are persuaded by word and idea, not threats of violence. He continues that the public must become politically engaged to prevent power from being entrenched in the hands of politicians or political activists with extreme views, who believe that opposing views or beliefs must be suppressed by force. Pay attention. Canada before our democracy is all but destroyed. You will not be happy if the radicals succeed. Then it will be too late to speak up and register your objections. Betty Ann Tremblay. The feds have their plans and seem willing to do anything to push them through. Sue government, sue us. Here is a question that should not sit well in anyone's mind if you are a taxpayer in this country. Should any person or group have the right to sue the government? In reality, you are suing me and everyone else who pays taxes. Most of us will have nothing to do with whatever they are suing for, yet we are forced to pay. Maybe, instead, make the people who are responsible be held accountable, because the billions upon billions that we are forced to pay for ineptitude is breaking our backs, or should I say, our banks. At the very least, we need a conversation about this. Wayne Boyce. Holding politicians to account is an ongoing struggle. So that's the last from that opinion piece and my final thoughts. Yes, holding politicians accountable is an ongoing struggle, mostly due to the fact they never suffer the consequences of the godless ideology which motivates them. But also because the ideologically possessed population which follows them have rejected the narrative upon which our liberty was founded, for delusional ideation made possible by resentful fools who have twisted Hegel's dialectical tool into a weapon of oppression. It is as Sir Walter Scott stated in his poem, Thomas the Rhymer, and see ye not the braid, braid road that lies across that lily lovin'? That is the path of wickedness, though some call it the road to heaven. Our ideologically possessed political leaders who are in league with the unholy elements behind this totalizing enterprise have sold the world a path of wickedness while calling the hell they are creating heaven. These are my thoughts to think and pray about. I've given you some tools. It's up to us to deconstruct this narrative, or it will deconstruct us. It will destroy us. It nearly already has. But God is still on the throne. We need to pray without ceasing. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day.